What kind of women did the French emperor really like? Napoleon not only married a widow, but fell in love at first sight with the countess when he pursued the Russians to Poland. What would it do if he couldn't find her? He'd throw a party and invite all the Polish nobility to it. Napoleon waited patiently for her to appear, even when it was told that all the people in Poland who were worth presenting to him had arrived. Napoleon looked steadfastly at the door and did not leave. Soon after, the 70-year-old count arrived with Marie in tow. When Napoleon saw the count, he felt sorry for her. He thought it was a waste for such an old man to marry such a young wife. His words always implied that he was the right man for her. But Marie was looking forward to more than that because her country was being divided between Prussia, Austria, and Russia. So she begs Napoleon to help her take her country back from the invaders. Since he didn't answer Marie, she had to leave in silence. During the ball, Napoleon didn't even bother to listen to Fouché's report on his work. He just stared at Marie. He couldn't take it anymore just looking at her. So he asked Fouché to write a letter.
J'ai vu que vous, je l'admire, je ne désire une réponse bien vite pour calmer l'ardeur de...
The next day, Caulaincourt came to tell him that Marie was waiting for him in the bedroom. This made Napoleon very happy. He had been waiting for this moment for a long time. Marie said that many people had suggested that she used this opportunity to impress Napoleon, even her husband, who was trying to push her into Napoleon's arms. They were doing it to get Napoleon to help restore Poland. Given that all of Europe wants him dead, there's no guarantee that he'll be able to complete the mission, but he vows that he'll never forget every moment he spends with Marie in the future. Marie will dedicate herself and do everything in her power to make him fall in love with this exotic little country, and in doing so, Napoleon captured Marie's heart. But he received bad news early the next morning after the pleasure. His army had been attacked by the Russians. Napoleon said a fond farewell to Marie and promised to give her back a free Poland. Napoleon kissed the Countess goodbye and hurried to the front, to a place called Exile. The Battle of Exile was a hard one for him to fight. The French and the Austrian and Russian allies showed incredible bravery. The battle was a no-win situation, one of Napoleon's bloodiest. He had lost 5,000 men in just 20 minutes of fighting. His men even advised him to leave before it was too late. Napoleon refused to give up and leave. So he asked Murat, his favorite cavalry general, "Will you let them annex us?" Murat immediately understood what he was saying and turned around to gather his troops. Napoleon took another look at the battle and said that if the reinforcements were not here by 10 p.m., he would have to retreat. Murat rode up to the line of soldiers and began to raise their morale. His subordinate was skeptical and asked, "Is it really worth it to make this unnecessary sacrifice?"
Non, mais il n'empêche que c'est magnifique.
What followed was one of the most spectacular cavalry charges of Napoleon's war. The French had broken up the Russian formation. Even the men's bravery and courage were not enough. That news kept coming, like Prussian troops attacking the French. Napoleon had no choice but to send the guards into battle. This was unprecedented in all previous wars, as the guards were usually there to defend the emperor. The fact that Napoleon was pushed to such an extent shows the strength of the Russian army. The chief ordered the guards not to shoot because the old guards only fought with bayonets. Then the battle began with a white-knuckle fight, and it was a fierce one. Even with Napoleon's ace in the hole, he had little chance of winning. Is he really going to lose today? When it was a matter of life and death, reinforcements led by Ney arrived. Napoleon is relieved to see the warriors charging into battle. In the end, the French turned the tide of battle against the resilient Russians. The battle was not over until nightfall. Both sides suffered heavy casualties. After the battle, the first thing Napoleon did was write a love letter instead of going home. The battle left the French and Russian armies without a decisive victory. So a truce was called. Napoleon shook hands with Tsar Alexander I. Tsar Alexander was sailing on a raft to the first French emperor in a dignified and majestic manner. Napoleon marveled at how impressive the Tsar's defeat was. Caulaincourt, on the other hand, thought that one could choose between a grimy face or a luxurious appearance as a cover for defeat. But of course, one usually chose the latter.
Je déteste les Anglais à un point que je ne saurais dire.
Dans ce cas, si la paix est faite.
The French and the Russians rejoiced at the sight of peace. Hence this painting of the meeting in Namon. The French emperor and the Russians are meet to propose peace. Napoleon told Alexander I, "Do you really think that France is negotiating with you? It's just France imposing peace on you." Alexander I laughs at this remark. Napoleon continued to pressure him. "If you don't accept my terms, I will wipe your Austro-Hungarian alliance off the face of the earth and reduce your empire to rubble. East of the Vistula River is Russia's, and west of the river is France's, as long as we honor our agreement." The Tsar laughed helplessly at this proposal. But there was a problem. Poland was neither French nor Russian. Alexander I would never, under any circumstances, allow Poland to become independent and equal to Russia. Otherwise it would be a threat to Russia. So he made a promise that if Napoleon would give up the restoration of Poland, he would persuade Britain to stop organizing the European alliance against France. After all, as Tsar, he didn't like the idea of Britain being in charge. So Napoleon ended up helping Poland reclaim only the part of the country that Prussia had carved up, and created the short-lived Grand Duchy of Warsaw. Interestingly, the Grand Duchy of Warsaw is the only country in the world that has Napoleon in its national anthem. In 1808, Napoleon launched the War of Conquest of the Iberian Peninsula in order to suffocate the British Isles and enforce a strict continental blockade. The French invasion provoked strong resistance from the people of the Iberian Peninsula. Riots broke out in Spain. Napoleon ordered the King of Spain to abdicate on the spot, and then he sent his brother Joseph to take his place. Murat became King of Naples because Napoleon focused too much on the Spanish royal family and not the local people. The 20,000 soldiers in Madrid surrendered. Instead of suppressing the rebellion, King Joseph saw the chaos and fled. He also realized that he should have made Murat King of Spain from the beginning. Though Murat is ambitious, at least he's not a coward. But they knew that only St. Petersburg was too far away to receive the news. So Caulaincourt had to get there before the Tsar knew about the rebellion in Spain. He couldn't let the Tsar have the slightest suspicion of his power. With the fire already in the south, they had to do everything they could not to let it spread to the east. So Napoleon organized the Congress of Erfurt with Alexander I. Since Alexander I claimed to be their friend, the Tsar needed to prove to Napoleon that he could keep the Austrians and Prussians quiet while he dealt with the Spanish right. As for the Spanish hooligans, Napoleon sends Marshal Ney with his army to Madrid to crush the rebellion once and for all. Tall Iron thought this would lead to a weakening of the eastern forces. It wasn't the best strategy, but it would have been more dangerous for him if the whole of Europe thought that a group of terrorists had gotten away with insulting the French army. The Congress of Erfurt was also the beginning of the Tall Iron Revolt, and the French army was soon embroiled in a war with the people. Napoleon had to swallow his own bitter fruit.